Hey, my name is Nikki, and I wanted to do this introductory video to introduce myself. I recently started a nonprofit for feral cats here in Utah. It's called Feed and Fix Foundation. 4.5 years ago, my husband and I bought our townhome, and right out this window here, I started noticing all of these cats everywhere. And always being an animal lover, I was heartbroken, and immediately I knew I had to do something about it. So I reached out to best friends here in Utah, and they told me that I can participate in TNR and be their caregiver. I had no idea what TNR meant, and I watched some videos, I borrowed some traps from them, and got in touch with another volunteer, and she taught me how to do TNR and how to set up feeding stations and be their caretaker. There was, I think, about 17 cats across the way, and 8 of them were kittens that we were able to get into a rescue, and the other ones all got fixed and released exactly where I found them. So trap, neuter, release. And I've been their caregiver ever since. Some have passed away since then. Some have just disappeared and never came back. One I was able to tame and get adopted out. 2 live in my house. And I still have one that now eats in my yard. So I started Feed and Fix Foundation to create awareness about TNR and feral cats, and to be able to, get help from the community by either donating food or money for food, TNR and the supplies, or teaching people how to volunteer. I think one of the things with participating in TNR is that it becomes really expensive, and we all pay for it out of pocket. So I think that people will do it for a little while, and then the expense becomes too much, and then they stop. So I am hoping to be able to create resources for volunteers to just volunteer their time to do the TNR, and we, or Feed and Fix Foundation, can cover all of the TNR expenses, and if they're willing to be the caregiver and feed the cats every day, we can cover the cost of the cat food and the feeding stations and the shelters. But I currently have 6 cats in my home. All of them have their own story. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them were once feral and are now tamed and live in my home. And one of them was my neighbor's cat, who she was living outside and she really wanted to live inside. So she has her own story, and we'll get into that in another video. And then one of them is Furry, who was a kitten a rescue called me about, asking if I could teach him some manners. He was being kept in the basement because he was very bad and he was biting. And so I was like, yeah, I could teach him some manners. And he has no manners, and he didn't listen, and he was super bitey. And really, I decided to keep him because I was so afraid that somebody would abuse him or put him on the street because of his bad behavior. So he's grown up a little bit now. He's like 1.5 years old, maybe almost 2. And he's definitely has more manners than he did when he was a kitten. So I think it just took some time. And but I'll just introduce you to some of my cats. This right here is Merlin, also known as Boots, Bootetsy, Bootsy. His story, Bootsy, say hi. His story is, I got notified on one of the rescue groups that I'm on Facebook for TNR, and they said that there was this cat over by a business in the parking lot by the dumpster, and he was limping, and he had these kittens following behind him. So we thought he was female, I went out, assessed the situation, had another volunteer help me, and we went out to trap kitties that night. And we trapped Merlin, who I had named Meredith at the time, thinking he was the mom to these kittens that were following behind him. And he was in super bad shape. He had abscesses all over, he was limping, couldn't put any weight on one of his paws. And I have some videos of the night that we trapped him. And I took him to the vet the next morning. Now, I didn't use a clinic that I normally use for TNR because it was just really short notice and I didn't have a spot. So I had to take him to just a regular veterinarian's office. And so I dropped him off in the morning, and they did an FIV test and it came back positive. And so he tested positive for FIV, and they called me and asked me if I wanted to euthanize him. They said he was in really rough shape. He really shouldn't be released. And the best thing to do for him was euthanize him. This was back in August of 2020. And I was just like, absolutely not. FIV is not a death sentence. I said, just fix him, get all of his wounds fixed up, and I will come and get him. And so I picked him up the next morning, and I put two large dog kennels together in a spare bedroom and made it really nice and cozy in there. Share some videos of him in there, and decided to work with him and see if I could tame him. They said he was about 10 years old. His teeth, he had a bunch of abscesses in his mouth, so a few weeks later I had to end up removing all of his teeth because they were just causing him a ton of pain. His wounds were healing. He was putting weight on his leg, and I started leaving the door open to the kennel and see if he would come out. And I was just spending, I work from home, so I was spending a lot of time in there, getting him used to my voice, me talking on the phone, different noises around the house. And yeah, we're 2 years later, and he's one of my best friends. So after 10 years of living on the street, or I don't really know what his story is, but he has a home with siblings. He now has cancer. He has a really rare and aggressive cancer that he was diagnosed with in early June. I noticed a kind of like an ulcer on his gums, and I took him to the vet right away, and they thought it was just an ulcer, prescribed him some antibiotic, and we thought it would go away. The first antibiotic didn't work, so we tried another one. When the second one didn't work, then they decided to biopsy it, and then it came back as cancer. So we were seeing an oncologist. It had spread already to his lymph nodes, and surgery wasn't an option because we would have to remove the majority of his jaw, and I really didn't want to do that. He also has kidney disease, so chemo wasn't an option because that could really affect their kidneys, and radiation wasn't an option because it wouldn't buy him that much time, and then the only radiation center is out in Colorado, so that wasn't an option. But we decided to just give him the best end-of-life care, and they gave him about 2 months to live, and here we are in October, and he's still here. We are now, we have a feeding tube right now, and he seems to be tolerating it really well. He's had it for a couple of weeks. The tumor in his mouth, we did debulk it, but it was still causing him some pain, so he's on pain meds 3 times a day, and I feed him through the feeding tube every 4 hours, and fills up his belly. He still loves to play. This string is one of his favorite toys. Botetsi, you want to show him you like to play? You want to show him? Yeah, this is what you like to do, huh? Yeah. So he is still really happy. It's definitely not his time to go. He's not ready for that yet. I feel like I will know the signs and see the signs when he's ready. So he's still really playful, sleeps with me every single night. Yeah, so he's doing good.